We're heading to Indiana and then all the way back home to Vermont in a 6-part series built entirely on backroads and scenic byways. No rushing, no interstates, just river roads, small towns, hidden history, and the long way west. We cross Lake Champlain into northern New York, then meander through Amish country before winding our way through the breathtaking Thousand Islands region along the St. Lawrence River before turning towards the Midwest. 6 episodes, 1 winding journey, there and back again. Hop in, this adventure is just getting started. And don't forget, Nicole finds a scene in each episode and turns it into a painting. So stay to the end to see the painting reveal. "131 West winds along the St. Lawrence River as we enter the Thousand Islands region, made up of more than 1,800 islands scattered across the water. For centuries, indigenous nations traveled these channels as part of vital trade routes linking the Great Lakes to the Atlantic. In the 1600s and 1700s, French and then later British forces recognized the river's strategic importance, turning it into a military corridor during the struggle for control of North America. By the late 1800s, the Thousand Islands transformed into a Gilded Age summer playground. Wealthy industrialists built grand island estates, including Boldt Castle, and steamboats carried visitors through the maze of rocky shores and pine-covered outcrops. Today it's known for boating, fishing, and unforgettable sunsets, but beneath the beauty lies a waterway that shaped commerce, conflict, and culture for centuries. Nestled along the mighty St. Lawrence River, right on the border between the United States and Canada, sits the historic river town of Ogdensburg, a place where international history, shifting empires, and small-town resilience all meet at the water's edge. Long before there were highways or railroads, indigenous peoples traveled these waters, and in 1749, a French missionary built Fort de la Présentation here as a beacon of faith, commerce, and a connection deep here in the North Country. By 1760, during the closing chapters of the French and Indian War, British forces took control of the fort and surrounding territory. After the American Revolution, treaties put this land into the hands of the young United States, and in the 1790s, settlement took on a new name, Ogdensburg, in honor of Samuel Ogden, whose vision helped shape its future. In the bitter winter of 1813, as the War of 1812 pressed on, a British force gathered across the ice in Prescott, Canada. On February 22nd, under the steady command of Lieutenant Colonel George MacDonell, known in history as Colonel Red George, they moved over the frozen St. Lawrence toward Ogdensburg. The morning air was cold and still. Frozen river and snow-covered fields reflected a pale winter sun. When musket fire finally broke the quiet, the clash was swift. British and Canadian troops pressed forward, American defenders were pushed back, and the village was taken. Supplies and stores were captured, and the sound of the battle faded into the vast northern landscape. Shortly afterward, the British forces withdrew back across the St. Lawrence, leaving behind the quiet town once more. From French mission to British frontier to an American riverside city, Ogdensburg's story is written in water and wind, in quiet mornings, and in the long, patient flow of the St. Lawrence. And through it all, the St. Lawrence keeps flowing, steady, patient, and full of stories. Just south of town, the Oswegatchie River winds quietly through forests, farmland, and small North Country communities before emptying into the St. Lawrence. We found this beautiful trail along the river, and we just had to go check it out. It was really neat to see how all the branches and grasses and shrubs were all covered with a really thick frost that really added to the beauty of it. By the 19th century, the river powered mills, floated logs downstream during the lumber boom, and helped fuel the growth of communities like Ogdensburg. Today it's known more for paddling, fishing, and quiet stretches of wilderness, a peaceful river with a past that helped shape the North Country. Heading down State Road 37, the next town we came to was Morristown. So we decided to turn down a side road and check it out. Sitting right on the St. Lawrence, Morristown, New York has quietly witnessed centuries of history. First settled around 1808, the town was officially established in 1821, named for Gouverneur Morris, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. The river shaped life here, the route for trade, travel, and during the War of 1812, nearby naval skirmishes reminded residents of the strategic importance of the St. Lawrence. Among Morristown's historic landmarks stands the former stone building that now houses the Morristown Public Library, a reminder of the town's early 19th century roots and enduring community spirit. Morristown remains a place where history flows gently alongside daily life, echoing in the streets, the river, and the enduring structures of the past. As we leave Morristown in the rearview mirror, the landscape subtly shifts. Just ahead sits Alexandria Bay, a village shaped by summer breezes, steamboat whistles, and the golden age of river travel. Where the St. Lawrence broadens and islands dot the river, Alexandria Bay sits quietly, a village shaped by river, summer fun, and nearly 2 centuries of stories. Originally settled in the early 1800s, Alexandria Bay grew from a cluster of farms and river landings into the heartbeat of the Thousand Islands region. The arrival of railroads in the mid-19th century opened the way for city visitors to discover these waterways, and the bay became a cherished summer destination. By the late 1800s, wealthy industrialist George C. Boldt began constructing Boldt Castle on Hart Island, a massive riverside mansion meant as a gift for his wife Louise. The castle featured 120 rooms, towers, and grand halls, a symbol of the Gilded Age of opulence. Construction halted tragically in 1904 when Louise died, leaving the castle unfinished for decades. Today, Boldt Castle has been restored and welcomes visitors to wander its grand halls, gardens, and turrets, offering a glimpse of the ambitious vision and romance of the Thousand Islands golden era. Today, Alexandria Bay has just over 1,000 year-round residents, but in the summer that number swells dramatically. What feels quiet in February becomes lively in July. Marinas are full, tour boats circling Boldt Castle, and the river alive with motion once again. We enjoyed our stop in Alexandria Bay and our drive through the surrounding area. The amount of islands and the castles off in the distance were quite a surprise. And as beautiful as it was here in February, we're excited to see what it would be like in the summer and maybe go on a boat tour. The next town we came to was Clayton, so let's go check it out. The road brought us right to the water's edge and a really nice little riverside park called Frink Park. We got out and walked around and just imagine what it would be like during a warm summer afternoon or even an early evening, people enjoying the river in different ways. I'm sure some would be sitting and just enjoying and relaxing and taking in the river view. That thought was behind Nicole's inspiration for her painting for this episode. She saw these colorful Adirondack chairs just sitting there, and she said, "These chairs look like they're just waiting for summer." The town of Clayton is nestled on a peninsula that juts out into the St. Lawrence and into the Thousand Islands. It has spent nearly 2 centuries shaped by river, industry, and the people who call it home. First settled in the early 1800s, the town of Clayton was organized in 1833, and the village of Clayton formally incorporated in 1872 as railroads reached the St. Lawrence, opening the region to travelers and steamboats from across the Northeast. The waterfront was the heart of early life. Wooden schooners and paddle wheel steamers carried goods, lumber, and passengers up and down the river. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, Clayton became a hub for Thousand Islands tourism. Hotels and inns lined the streets, concerts and dances filled the evenings, and downtown shops catered to visitors eager to explore the islands, fish the waters, or simply enjoy the scenic river views. Industry and ingenuity thrived alongside tourism. In 1920, local mechanic Carl Frink built one of the first practical steel snowplows in his machine shop, mounting a V-blade on a bus to keep northern roads clear. Frink snowplows went on to become a major manufacturer, leaving a lasting mark on the town and inspiring Frink Park, a central spot along the riverfront today. Fishing has always been part of Clayton's identity. A striking muskie monument in Frink Park celebrates the legendary river fish and the generations of anglers drawn to these waters. Nearby, the Clayton Memorial Lighthouse stands as a quiet sentinel over the St. Lawrence, honoring the town's maritime heritage and guiding the imagination to a time when dozens of lighthouses dotted the river, welcoming ships to harbor. Today, with roughly 1,700 residents, Clayton blends history and modern life. Tourists stroll the charming downtown streets, summer boats fill the harbor and museums, waterfront parks and historic buildings. Like the old stone structures lining the river, they keep the past alive. From steamboat whistles and bustling docks, to snowplows and monuments, to quiet evenings along the St. Lawrence, Clayton's story is written in water, wood, and stone, and it continues to flow just like the river itself. We headed south through rural farmland where old barns and silos dotted the landscape. Eventually, we met up with the river and followed it down towards Cape Vincent. Located right where Lake Ontario meets the broad expanse of the St. Lawrence River, Cape Vincent feels both like open water and quiet harbor, a place shaped by wind, waves, and centuries of movement. Long before settlers arrived, these shores were home to the Haudenosaunee peoples who traveled the waterways for trade and seasonal harvests. By the early 19th century, European American settlers were drawn here for the same reasons: water, access, and opportunity. In 1818, the community was incorporated as the village of Cape Vincent, named for the Vincent family, early landowners whose presence helped establish the town's identity. Cape Vincent's location made it a hub of transportation long before highways existed. Schooners and steamships tied up at its docks, carrying cargo, mail, and passengers to and from Canada and points farther inland. In the mid-1800s, paddle wheel steamers linked Cape Vincent to bustling ports, and summer visitors began arriving to enjoy the cool breezes of Lake Ontario and the scenic beauty of the Thousand Islands region. As tourism grew in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Cape Vincent became known for its hospitality. Elegant summer homes and hotels rose along the shoreline. Artists and vacationers came to sketch, sail, and fish, and the rhythm of life shifted with the seasons. Quiet winters giving way to lively summers filled with boats, music, and waterfront gatherings. The village also played a unique role in early American military history. During the War of 1812, American soldiers were housed here, and nearby waters were arenas of naval action as both American and British forces vied for control of the lakes and river routes. Strategic arteries in a young nation's struggle. Today, with a population of around 1,300, Cape Vincent still carries its maritime spirit. Ferries cross to nearby Wolf and Howe Islands, sailboats catch the lake breeze at sunset, and quiet streets of the village recall a time when the water was the highway and every horizon promised a new journey. Here where Lake Ontario meets the river, the past doesn't drift away. It echoes on the wind and waits for the rolling waves. Or maybe this time of year, the frozen waves. As we near the end of part one of our journey and the painting reveal for this episode, we travel along the river on our way towards Tibbetts Point Lighthouse. Along the way, we pass many beautiful, stately homes overlooking the water. Right where Lake Ontario pours its vast waters into the mighty St. Lawrence River, standing guard at the edge of land and deep blue horizon is Tibbetts Point Lighthouse, a sentinel of light for more than 170 years. The story begins in 1827 when Congress recognized the need to guide ships through this crucial passage between the lake and river. Mariners navigating the shifting shoals and strong currents needed a dependable beacon. By 1828, the first tower was constructed, rising proudly from the rocky shoreline. Its light became a welcoming guide for vessels bound for ports upriver and down, from distant Great Lake harbors to the heart of the Atlantic trade routes. Today, the light still shines, though automated long ago. The beacon remains a beloved landmark and living reminder of the region's maritime past. Visitors walk its grounds in the summer, watch freighters pass at sunset, and feel in the breeze off of Lake Ontario a connection to all those who once depended on its trustworthy light. At Tibbetts Point, history isn't distant. It lives in the light that reaches across the water, guiding boats and stirring the imagination, a beacon between lake and river, both past and present. Thank you for riding along on part 1 of our journey to Indiana. We hope you check back in again next week. And here is the final painting reveal. Waiting for Summer.